So you've touched down here at the Darwin Airport, and from tomorrow, where you go to quarantine will depend on where you've come from and where you plan to go. Tomorrow we'll see the start of the NT's pilot program for home quarantine. It'll only include Darwin and Alice Springs and will only be a test group of about 100 people. If they can get through that successfully, testing the NT's ability to police home quarantine, hopefully from mid-November, the Northern Territory will move to a traffic light system of quarantine. If you're coming from a green zone, you're fine to move through the NT with no testing or quarantine required. An orange zone will be places that aren't considered hotspots, but are areas with low level risk of COVID-19 transmission. If you're coming from an orange zone, you'll need to get a test and isolate until it comes back negative. Red zone travellers will still be required to quarantine for 14 days, but if you're fully vaccinated, you should be able to do that at home. And if you're not, you'll still need approval to go to Howard Springs. For international arrivals, there are no changes if you're coming in on a repatriation flight. You'll still need to go to Howard Springs for 14 days. But if you're a Territorian getting off a new direct from London flight, you might be able to quarantine at home. By mid-December, hopefully just before Christmas, fully vaccinated travellers will be able to quarantine at home for just 7 days. But to be able to home quarantine, you'll need to tick a few boxes. The first being that you return a negative PCR test less than 3 days before you get here. You must also agree to get tested and use the Good to Go monitoring app so that officials can check in on you. You must also be able to access health clinics and COVID-19 testing facilities, which is why, to begin with, home quarantine will only be available in Darwin and Alice Springs. If, like most people, you don't live alone, your household won't have to quarantine with you, but they must agree to get tested and they have to be fully vaccinated, and you probably shouldn't be hugging or sharing a couch while you're watching TV. If you're fully vaccinated but your house isn't deemed suitable for home quarantine, you will be able to go to Howard Springs and you'll pay half of the normal $2,500 cost. So theoretically, if mum and dad are planning on coming up to Darwin for Christmas from Melbourne, they'll be able to quarantine at home with you, but it's unlikely you'll be able to have any guests around for Christmas Day lunch because you won't be able to have any visitors if you're hosting someone who's in quarantine. So when might we be able to see a territory with no quarantine? Well, hopefully from the beginning of next year. It's unlikely your mates from Sydney will be able to make it up to ring in the new year at the Darwin waterfront without a stint in home quarantine or Hotel Howard Springs. But if all goes to plan with the pilot program from tomorrow, we should see fully vaccinated passengers able to enter the Northern Territory without quarantine from January or February next year.